the podcast for all humans who are eager to know more about creativity, what it is, and what it means, and how people use it. Our guest today is someone that has worked for several years in digital media, music videos, advertising, and worked on some high profile projects such as The Dark Knight and Casino Royale. He founded Territory Studio in 2010. Highly regarded in the industry, Territory's name is frequently appearing in the closing credits of film by world-class studios such as Marvel, Paramount, 20th Century Fox, and Warner Bros. The studio has established a solid track record in innovation, not only through its creative output, but also its technical ability, which I'm very eager to talk about, to deliver groundbreaking, future-facing concepts. Our guest today is David Sheldon Hicks. Welcome.
Thank you for such a lovely introduction and hosting me here. I'm looking forward to answering some interesting questions.
I do have, I mean, we always start, as you know, David, with the core question of the podcast, which is, what does creativity means to you?
So it's funny. So I get comments from some of my team about wearing a white shirt sometimes in meetings. It's funny how we all identify with creativity in different ways, and it definitely becomes part of who we are. So I think I struggle because I'm a creative person, but I also like the business side, and I also like technology, and I also like lots of other things. But it never stops me from being a creative person. And it might sound actually, when I answer it that way, that I've got a bit of a chip on my shoulder, but I haven't. I am just wired as a creative person. I just can't help but operate that way. I can't help but be thinking creatively, playfully, challenging convention. I love looking at things and thinking, how could that be done differently? And that could be a spreadsheet. Or it could be a social media post, or it could be just the way in which we manage our teams here. It doesn't really matter. But for me, creativity is just a way of being. It's a way of being. It's a way of thinking. I do use drawing, sketching, noodling. Like I've got my book here, and I'll be drawing something into it to think. I'll notice that I'm doing like little detailed sketches and things that don't mean anything. It's almost like when people talk with their hands, and they're framing things and they're thinking about stuff, and they're creating physical visual structures in front of their face to help them express the words that are trying to come through. That is me. That is just how I work. And I think I don't know if it's the case for everyone, because I'm not inside their brain. But I think visually. When I'm thinking about a problem, I'm trying to create an image around it. And it might be, I don't know, how do we financially make the cost work this week? But there will be a diagram going on in my head. There was a great, there's a guy that I used to work with quite a lot, and he had this idea of, like kind of creating these mental models. He was a designer, a chap called Lee Sankey, and he chatted to lots of different people about this idea of these kind of visual models that we create in our minds. And it's a bit like that scene in Pixar's Ratatouille, where they're tasting these flavors and they can kind of see the visual abstract notes of the flavors. And Lee was kind of tapping.
Cheese.
Yeah, like the different notes, wine and the cheese kind of thing. And you see flavors as images and animations. And I love that idea. And I think that's typically how I work. And Lee was talking about, you can get really complex visual structures. So if you're a musician and you're thinking about how you create and move through a series of really complicated chords, you see that as a series of images and animations on dynamic systems. I'm assuming that a lot of people, when they start to master something, however hard it is, like the guitar or whatever it is, that they have some kind of visual aid, some kind of mind mapping type image that goes on. So that's what creativity means to me. I think all people can be creative. I think some people can create creativity or create moments that really move a lot of people. And people create things that are just very personal and very representative of them, and maybe it's purely for them. It's not for anybody else. But that's what it means to me.
So we could say that it's a way of being, generally speaking. A way of
Completely
being,
agree with that.
right?
Yeah. And
What
I can
was
be
your-
logical. I can be very
Yeah.
logical.
I find very interesting that you say you're a very visual person, because I am too. because I am a designer by trade. And I do visualize sometimes feelings as well. And I did a collection of paintings that are representation of movies of my life and the feelings those movies provoke in me. And it was a very strange kind of path that I went down because it took a year or two. First of all, to make a list of movies of my life, which I think is an appropriate topic to discuss with you because obviously it's your field. It's if you know if you have to think about movies of your life, it must be really it's always so complicated. And then I visualize them, but I try to look at them in a different way. And so I visualized the feelings that those movies were awakening in me. Instead of visualizing, I don't know, Ratatouille, you see the mouse, but it's not that direct. So I think that creativity is also, in a nutshell, sorry, the creativity is also a way of seeing things differently from another point of view sometimes. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's helping people see things through a different lens. I mean, sometimes it's creating something from nothing. That's why I feel as though when I watch people that are able to program, they're able to code and they're making something from nothing. I think, well, I know they're very logical people, but it doesn't mean that they're not creative. I think that, we create these kind of separations, these like, I'm a creative person. I can't possibly also be a logical person. And I don't think that's true. Like, it's a bit like the neurodiversity spectrum. You can be both autistic and ADHD and different balances of that. And I think that a creative mind is not necessarily not a logical mind, or a creative activity is also not necessarily something else. So yeah, but I definitely think for me anyway, it definitely just feels like a way of being. I get so much pleasure from creating. And sometimes for me personally, that can be gardening. It can be gardening, or it can be cooking, or it can be. And my son has just got back into making flip books and doing traditional animation books. And it's funny because he's probably better at that than me. And he looks at me kind of quizzically saying, "Don't you run an animation studio? Shouldn't you be good at this?" It's not, I find very funny and humiliating at the same time.
That's
Uh,
humbling.
you know, but yeah, no, it is just something. It's part of my identity. I think is the best way to describe it. And what I love about creativity is it's not measurable. You know, it's not like some people kind of get into, my bank account's bigger than your bank account. I mean, creativity, it doesn't matter. It's just like it's a point of connection with other people when you start talking about the things that you get excited by and the things that you are inspired by creatively. It's very rarely an area of competition. It's almost always an area of connection and familiarity. And I love it for that.
100%. I love what you just said, and I share it 100%. Yes, you really nailed exactly what I think as well. Do you have any example of a creative moment, a breakthrough moment where you had an idea and you thought, this is a brilliant idea? I At any point for any project, was there your breakthrough did you ever have that actually? Because some people are slow in their eureka moment, if you will. But maybe did you have a moment where you thought you were looking at a project and you thought, I know exactly what I can do here?
So I wouldn't say particular project, but I would say that, like, my mindset has evolved over time when it comes to my creative connection to projects, and how I love seeing other creatives flourish now. So if you think about, typical journey maturity for creative professionals, people that are making a living out of selling their creative services, you start off learning from other professionals. When I was a junior, I remember learning from some other designers and animators. And then you kind of find your feet and you kind of raise on through the ranks, and you kind of get to a point where you're absolutely amazing at making the thing, whatever the thing is. And then you start becoming slightly supervising the project. So you're not making the whole thing, you're maybe directing the look of it, but you're working with the rest of the team who are also really good at making it to kind of see the bigger project through. And then you get to a moment where you might be getting really good at that oversight, and you start to creatively direct multiple teams. And that is the moment, I think, where you have to learn the transition of there's a mindset shift. I'm not going to tell the people uh, what they need to change. I'm going to tell them how they might want to change their mindset. And so at the moment of becoming a creative director, in an ideal world, you become a creative psychologist and you help people unlock their mindset to become the best creative teams that they can be. And you're setting up good creative dynamics. You're finding good new creative people. You're figuring out how to get the best from the team, not to get the best from the project. So that for me is a really successful creative director. And then you kind of go beyond that. And you might be starting to look at setting up creative teams, setting up technology partnerships with the right technology partners to do things innovatively. You might be, working with clients on new cutting edge things that go beyond the creative. It might go into strategy. It might go into technology innovation. It could go into the commercials of things for people, but you're still using your creative mind. You're just not applying it to the making of the work. And that kind of growth and mindset comes through a lot. And in working with some film directors, I suddenly realized that to scale and to do incredible projects, you need to be able to find amazing talent. You need to be able to find brilliant people. And then you need to give them a really, really good brief. And on films, that brief is a great script. It's great pre-production meetings. It's making every word count and helping everyone understand the psychology of the project. So great example, when we were working on Guardians of the Galaxy, James Gunn, and I'd never worked with James before, in the script, he'd written in the soundtrack. So it was like Jackson 5 here and the Pina Colada song here. Because like a walking, talking tree and a robotic raccoon are kind of nuts. So to get into the mindset of this film script without that, I think would have been really hard. And you're like, what is this? Like we'd never seen the Marvel universe in space before. So understanding the intent of the movies was really hard. But as soon as James had written in the kind of the soundtrack, you kind of got this spirit of the movie without him telling you how to do your job. And that's really clever. And for me, that's the sign of a great creative director is how do you give everyone the sense and the spirit of the project without telling them what to do? Because otherwise you can't scale and you can't get the best from your team. And you will turn everyone into operators, not creative people. So it's about that kind of creating that room for freedom, but giving them the opportunity to stick to brief and deliver something above and beyond what everyone was expecting. So that was a real realization moment for me. I probably first learned that through Ridley Scott and things like Prometheus and The Martian and his creative team, people like Arthur Max and Paul Inglis and Florence Hicks. And just we've worked with a lot of great people around these directors. I say the directors so that everyone knows them. On a day-to-day, we're often working with production designers and art directors on the film sets. So we learn a lot from those teams. I think the other thing we learned a lot from films again is the requirement to do research, to understand the things that you're designing for. Like being informed as a creative and will help you not just deal with it at a surface level. If you do a lot of research around, so for instance, The Martian, we did a lot of work and we asked a lot of questions of NASA and we had direct access to NASA. So we could just chat to them about how they use data. So when we're designing for the displays in the movie, we actually understand what's going on those screens and why different people at NASA look at those screens in different ways and interpret the data in different ways. So that kind of level of understanding is so useful and builds in context for you when you're designing for. And then once you have that, just the work that comes through is more layered. It has more depth. It has more meaning. And you can pause the film in moments. And there's some effort to realize it in something that feels more authentic to how NASA would have used it in their own systems. So we really try. We really try and make that effort whenever we can in terms of research. It's not always possible when the film's totally fantastical. You can't always bet it in reality as much as you would like to. But we take the effort to care. I think that's a big one. Caring about what you're designing for, caring about who you're creating for, having that empathy, having that understanding of the user or the audience. And then the other thing, I probably learned this from working on Christopher Nolan films. I worked on The Dark Knight before setting up Territory. One of the things that I love about Chris and his movies is there's a real respect for the audience. He doesn't try and dumb it down. He doesn't try and simplify things. He asks actually quite a lot of the audience. He asks them to pay attention. If you think about movies like Inception, like you blink and you kind of miss a key plot point and then you're kind of trying to keep up with everything that's going on. And I love that. I love that confidence and not needing to, to fill in every single gap. Let people yeah, don't pander and don't, what's the word? Yeah, just talk down to people and assume that, there's a lower common denominator in the audience than there actually is. I think just giving them that grace is really important. So bringing a level of maturity to our design work, I think is important, and treating people with the respect that they will understand what you're need to be too prescriptive. You can be quite suggestive and people will enjoy that. Actually, people enjoy bringing a little bit of effort in themselves to something and rewarded with, additional experience from that is something that I think is often lacking in work a lot at the moment, is that we oversimplify. We make it too frictionless and then you have less of a memorable experience.
That is so true. And Christopher Nolan, if anything, thinks that we are a lot more intelligent than we actually are. He's so sophisticated and so fantastic. And I had to watch Tenet, I don't know how many times before I had a vague idea of my theory about it. And even now I'm doubting myself when I watch it.
Have you ever watched it in reverse? Have you ever played it backwards?
No, I haven't, not yet. But that might work.
Just to
It might be a palindrome movie as well. Oh, thank you for this. It was very interesting. But can I ask you? I mean, first of all, the Guardian of the Galaxy would be nothing without the soundtrack. So yeah, that was definitely an important, like the pillar of the movie. I can imagine it was illuminating for you working on it, thinking, okay, I get it, because you really get it through the soundtrack.
Yeah, completely, completely. And it's so hard because sometimes you read a script and it's really hard. It's really hard to
Yeah, to
understand
visualize,
the
right? To
tone and
visualize
the
in your
tone
mind
of the
what the story
intent.
can be.
Yeah. And you're all making that interpretation at the same time. So what I mean by that is the costume department have an interpretation of that script, and the visual effects team have an interpretation of that script, and an art department. And so you're all trying to solve for it, but you don't want it to feel as though it's been made by 100 different people. It needs to feel cohesive. So one of the things that I really enjoy with film productions is going into the pre-production teams, the art department, the costume department, and walking around, because you tune into their response to that script and you see all the concept art on the walls, like floor to ceiling, just covered in sketches and visual research and models and maquettes and like samples, and it reminds me of being back at art school. It's amazing. It's one of the most creative, satisfying. It's a mess. There's like foam board everywhere and glue guns everywhere, and
But that's the fun of it,
it's got
right?
that energy. It's got that energy of creativity about it. But in immersing yourself in that environment, in immersing yourself in that kind of visual research, more so than a Miro board or a Pinterest, and I do love those too. But being in that physical environment, walking around it and experiencing that with the rest of your team helps you tune into the overarching direction of the project, and it makes it more visceral and more real for you. So that can be really powerful. And I've definitely learned that from film productions. In the same way that we've learned, lots from other creative disciplines that we work with. We do a lot of work with car design teams, and we also do a lot of work on computer games. And actually, a lot of the lessons that we have in computer games can be brought across into the film work that we do, and vice versa. I definitely remember. I think one of the reasons that we ended up working on Ready Player One with Steven Spielberg was just our knowledge and our experience in working on computer games for such a long period of time, and thinking about the of storytelling through an immersive world is like it's not easy. All of those little cues and all those little Easter eggs, and it's a very particular medium to tie into. So we got a lot from that, from the cross disciplinary nature of what we do.
Can I ask you a moment of struggle where you kind of the opposite of the breakthrough, when you thought, gosh, I really don't know how to tackle this, and you had to come up obviously with another creative solution, I'm sure, that maybe taught you something? Because I know, for instance, personally, when I struggled, very typically moments where I learned something as well. because you have
Yeah.
to kind of accelerate your creativity muscle. You have to flex them a little bit
No,
more.
I mean, there's so many. I was just kind of going through the data banks, just
So
trying to
many.
figure
I'm
out
sure there are not so many.
which is the best one to talk about. I remember, funny enough, it wasn't really my moment of struggle, but I learned a lot from it, watching them go through it. Somebody had it was on my team. It was years and years ago, over 10 years ago. And I remember he was sweating this thing. It was like this hologram. It was a robotic dog that was running, and there was all these little details that were kind of tracking over the top of it. And it was also beautiful. But the problem was there was so much stuff there you couldn't really read it.
Mm.
And I said to him, "What do you think about this?" And he said, I'm struggling to read it, but I love all of it. I'm in love with all the things that I've designed." And the classic line would be, sometimes you have to kill your babies, you have to kill your darlings, and just move on. But I said, well, don't forget that we're working with time-based medium. So you can see some of it at the start and you can see some of it at the end, and you can just play around with that. There's no reason why you can't keep all of it. It doesn't need to appear all the time. And I think when we're working in motion and movement, sometimes we lock ourselves into creating a perfect still first. And actually it's not about doing that. It's about creating interconnected, beautiful moments that flow from one into the next. And so you can almost, thinking like a graphic designer can sometimes be a curse when it comes to motion, because it really isn't about the image. It's about the emotion and the storytelling of it all. And you need to come at it from that first. And I think I've certainly been guilty of falling in love with an image and a design that I've created, and then it just doesn't work in movement. Kind of letting go of that and learning why something far less perfectly composed actually is far more correct when in kinetic over time. And I'm sure it's the same with interaction and other things. The pursuit of a beautiful image is not always at the advantage of the project. And we definitely saw that even with projects on films whereby, so, for a UX designer, they will look at what we do and they will, pull it apart, and they could write an entire book over why our interfaces are wrong, and they would be correct. However, that wasn't the brief. Our brief was not to depict a futuristic interface of where Apple or Google might be in 10 years' time. Our brief was to create a digital display that emotes the texture and the feeling of that world and the characters that sit in front of it. And it must be very frustrating sometimes when people do and they do digital platform work and they look at some of the things that we do, because it's very impressionistic. It's meant to be evocative. And so sometimes we can design things that look awful, like they look really trashy. So we did some neon screens on Blade Runner 2049. Like they were kind of almost like advertising for like, pot noodles and like, fast food and all that kind of stuff. And they were meant to look trashy. They weren't meant to be beautifully designed. The colors weren't meant to be pretty. They were meant to feel very throwaway and very disposal. Now, as a designer, it goes against the grain not to do something that looks utterly beautifully crafted and put that into a movie. But at the core of it, it was right for the film, and it was right for that moment in the film. So that's a deeper learning for me, is that something that is aesthetically beautiful is not always beautiful in terms of its answer to what is required. And sometimes it's more important to put the needs of your audience before the needs of you as a designer. And that is an internal wrestle here that is ongoing sometimes, and we forget it other times.
I feel like the UX comment must be something that happens to you quite often, because I can see it in your face.
I don't.
They tell me all the time. They tell me all the time, this is not realistic. This is not exactly how it should be done. But I mean, it's self-explanatory, isn't it? That it's an an emotional visualization of that particular tool. You don't, obviously, you guys, I'm sure, don't think that you're doing what NASA's doing in reality. You're just probably mirroring, also making it simpler for everyone else, all of us, to understand that we're looking at a dashboard that is supposed to be a space dashboard that, if it was realistic, I would probably even wouldn't even understand.
It's funny though. It's very funny because started out doing fantastical interfaces that aren't meant to, they're not meant to work. But actually, what we're most busy with at the moment is a lot of real interfaces. So, we're doing, we work with a lot of car brands doing the real interfaces in the cars, in the dashboard, in the digital experience design that's going on. We're actually doing a lot of work with space agencies on real data design with space agencies, we've got a really great client in Vast building a space station, so ironically,
You went all
have to
circle.
turn we have to turn that off in our brain, and we have to go super functional and super engineered and very, very safe and responsive. So yeah, we have to put on a few different hats, and they are sometimes in conflict across the different industries that we're working. But that's fine. That's fine. I think that variety becomes interesting and exciting for creative people most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, my next question would be something about your creative processes. So, how you get in a creative state, what kind of tool you use, if you use any tool, or now you're at the point where you just have a vision and you have a team that does all the work, and what kind of habits have you formed in order to make it all work? Because if you go from film production to gaming to actual space stations, it is kind of daunting for me as a normal human. I
So
can't even
fortunately,
imagine.
yeah, I don't have to do all the work myself. So I'm in a fortunate position. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 4 or 5 offices globally. I'm sat in London today, but we've got, significant offices in San Francisco and LA. And then we've also got 2 smaller offices in Vancouver and Barcelona. Full-time headcount somewhere around 200 people. Maybe it's 200 with freelance. I'm not sure, but it's a lot of people who I cannot get close to the work. And I thought I was going to be more upset by that than I actually am. I actually don't mind that. And that goes back to your original question around creativity. I still feel like I'm creative. I just don't feel as though I'm doing that through Photoshop and Figma and, whatever the tools are, depending on the thing. I think my process now is building the right teams and having the right conversations. So I love discussing the initial seed of a project with our partners and clients and film directors and game studios and car designers and whoever else, and setting up the project for success at that point. Looking at the brief, stealing the brief. What is it? No, forget. I don't care if it's a commercial. I don't care if it's a hologram for a film. What is your point? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to solve for? Can I help me
Zoom
take a
out.
higher view on this? Yeah, zoom out and take a high view on this project. So that's really that bit's important to me. Ideally, I want to become somebody that is useful to you on more than one project. Otherwise, it becomes very transactional, and you won't get the best from us and we won't get the best from you. So I want to looking at those things. But more than anything, how can we make this the best thing it possibly can be? Now, some of that is just about having great creative people and great production teams and all the support that kind of comes around somebody like IT and, everyone that supports that. Sometimes it's about having really clever conversations with technology partners. So we might have a really close relationship with, I don't know, Adobe, or just somebody that we can kind of go to them. Like Magic Leap were a good example. We did a lot of work with Magic Leap augmented reality headset, and just kind of understanding, okay, so when's your next headset out? Okay, so if it's out next summer, can we start working on projects at the beginning of the year so that when the headset comes out, we've got some really exciting projects on your new headset? That all of those sorts of conversations. So creativity doesn't exist in isolation. It's not a walled garden. It's part of a bigger solution that's going on. And just being a part of that, understanding the evolution of a film script and how they've got to where they've got. And would they like to have a conversation about world building if we understand technology and how that might reflect a society or a cultural layer or future projection in some way? Would you like to hear some of our thinking and understanding on that so that it that influences things at the right point. So I try and be involved early on, and I try and be involved in like just world class teams. Like, how do we get the absolute best people on this doing, and how are they set up for success? Have we got all of the right tools and processes and people around this to kind of help make it be as good as it can be? And then again, kind of learning from some of the great film directors and car design teams, then get out of the way, let people do what they're great at doing. So that really for me is how it works. So a lot of my thinking, what I've started to get better at is strategic thinking, like setting aside time just for thinking. And I used to think that I could do thinking and typing on my phone or typing on a tablet. Thinking needs to be done with handwriting for some reason. I don't know why. Going from the brain to the hand. Maybe it's because there's less of a technology translation. I don't know, but I find that handwriting is key, and I find environment is important. I used to be able to do creative thinking and strategic thinking with music on. Now I can't. Having a bath is really good for deep thinking. Having a commute. So I have a commute into work every day, and that time on the train, just looking out the window, is really good creative and strategic thinking time. And then conversations, but conversations with people about totally other things. Like I was
100%.
having lunch today with somebody, and they're a lawyer, like they're an IP lawyer, and they were talking about some of the challenges with what they're doing. And I just stopped him for a minute and said, just say that thing again. And the way that he was looking at something in what he does totally changed my mind on something totally unrelated in something else, in a project based, an animation project, like completely unrelated. And I told him what he'd done. He was like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Because we both are dealing with people, we're dealing with time, we're dealing with stories. I'm always dealing with like deep research and then bringing that up into a story. So actually your world is far more similar to mine than you might like to think. And I find that kind of fascinating. So good conversations, being around interesting people to create those kind of like happy accidents that still happen. Like happy accidents still happen, but it doesn't need to be on a screen or on a piece of paper. It can be conversationally. Like, how do you move your thinking and your ideas forward? I think that's where I'm at now, and I love it. It's sometimes very frustrating because I have a terrible memory as I get older, a really bad memory, and like I come up with these great ideas and then they disappear again. I'm like, oh no, how do I grab that back? How do I get it back? It's disappeared. It's gone. So yeah, important you write things down. Very important you write things down.
About the connection between the brain and the pen, I think I saw Emma Thompson on Jimmy Fallon very recently, who was saying, Emma Thompson on, I think it was Jimmy Fallon or another American show. And she said, I need to write everything by hand because I have a deep belief that my brain has to connect to the story. And she basically said what you just said. She firmly believes that the creativity in the story is linked to her writing it with the pen and paper, not on computer, not on tablet, not on anything digital. And I find fascinating that you just mentioned it, because I thought that's it. That's almost exactly what she said. But I
Do you know
believe
what's
that
really
too.
weird? Do you know what's really weird? Just thinking about this a little bit deeper, and I've never really talked about this before. But what's really weird is, and I'm looking at my notebook now. I started a new notebook for the start of the year. It's only a short one. Where I've taken the time to write things really neatly, it really sticks in my brain. Where
Yeah.
I've really scrawled it, done like, like doctor handwriting, where it's super quick and a bit scrappy, it's very throwaway. And I'm looking at some of these notes going, I need to write that up neatly so it definitely stays in. Isn't that weird though? Isn't it
But
weird
that
that
happens to me as well. I have the same thing. I've
is
got
that?
my notebook here. I've got a new set of pens for 2026 just to write things down. And I do need to write down sometimes even menial things that don't seem important. I sometimes need to write them down because then they'll come back, I don't know, for some ideas or some inspiration. And yeah, I believe that the brain and the hand are deeply connected for sure. And
The
it's
other thing
must be true.
the other thing I do, I love doing dog walks. If I do dog walks, it's just
Me
funny.
too. Yeah.
I do a dog walk every day. Our stupid little sausage dog. I I put headphones on and I put an audiobook on. And what happens, there's something about an audiobook. I probably tune into it for about 15, 20 minutes. And then I've walked another mile or so and I'm like, I haven't listened to any of this thing. What have I been thinking about? But all the ideas that have kind of been spilling out from reading or listening to reading um, are like gold. Like that thinking, it's like it's shaking something out. It's kind of like, and like some ideas are kind of falling out the side of it and that are really, really useful. And there's something about fresh air, connecting with nature, maybe. I think that definitely helps reset your brain and get it back into thinking about the constructive, the creative stuff. There's definitely something about nature and moving your body, actually, maybe moving your body and nature at the same time. That's kind of important to that. I mean, I couldn't put any science behind that at all. And I'm pretty sure there's an element of romanticism kind of like tied up in that as well. Um, and I wouldn't want to credit my stupid dog for too many great ideas. Um,
Don't insult the dog.
he's a stupid dog. I can share a picture if it's useful to your podcast. I don't know if you know much. I've got a miniature dachshund, and they are the most stubborn, independently minded animals on the face of the.
Right.
Um, but
I
but
have two
but
dogs.
very funny, very funny.
Yeah. But I think that we could put some science behind it. I have to research about that, but I think that walking and that there's definitely a connection between walking and thinking. For example, I like to walk my dogs very early in the morning. I walk with them before 7 a.m. and I have a very long walk with them. 30, 40 minutes. And it really does help me concentrating and kind of, it's a weird sensation between unwinding, but also charging up for the day. And in the creative
Hmm.
process, I find it really useful. Sometimes I too have ideas by just walking and looking at the mountains, and it works. I think that there is some kind of science. We just need to find out which proof we need to find, but I'm sure there is. So I think it's connected. I think you already answered the next question, which was how has your definition of creativity changed over the years? And can we say it changed in terms of mentoring and having a wider view on your work?
Yeah, I think it's expanded. I don't know if it's changed. I mean, I've always thought that lots of different things are creative, and like I said to you, I think I've always felt that some logical things are very creative as well. Like I said, like code or engineering or welding. You know, I love sculpture, but I've never had the time to get into it. I'm a fan of sculpture and I'm a fan of architecture and my wife's an artist and I love her canvases. And well, you can see one of them behind me, like abstract artwork. I'm a fan of lots of different areas of creativity. Um, and I can see how useful it is beyond just being art and design. And I think that the world sadly undervalues it. And I think the worst culprits for that sometimes are creative people. I think we like to think that it's separate to everything else and it's not combined and connected to everything else. But actually, I think it is. And yeah, I think we should be better at valuing it. But
Tell us a little bit about influences. Now, talking about all the things you like, do you have so many interests? I think it would be
so
very
yeah,
interesting
lots of
for the people
interests.
who listen.
Well, so I go in and out of different modes. Sometimes I'll be infatuated with books. I'm out on my book mode at the moment. I might just be be starting to get back into it. I'm reading a great book at the moment about the making of the original Tron film, which is completely fascinating to me, and just learning about how they were combining like cutting edge, computers with like traditional frame by frame animation and then using these kind of amazing lighting techniques and optical compositing. I love all that stuff. So fascinated by that. So I go in and out of phases of reading. I go in and out of phases with music. At the moment, I'm kind of going back to stuff that I probably listened to when I was like late teens, early 20s. Like, what am I listening to at the moment? I've just listened to a few of the Chemical Brothers albums and basement jacks and all kinds of stuff. I used to be into a lot of acid jazz and modern jazz more generally. Music is often an inspiration, and I will turn it on to tune into a particular mindset. What else? Dance and choreography. I've always admired it from afar. We're hopefully going to work with a company soon, which is really exciting. Actually working with a kind of classical music composer as well on an artistic live performance. And I've been a fan of their work for many years, and now kind of getting the chance to work with them. So that's really exciting. What else inspires me? I just I mean, people really so often, like people and their personal stories. That's I'll listen to different podcasts. I listen to different audiobooks all the time, and their stories and experiences are always really really interesting. Places. I love architecture. Absolutely love architecture. I love seeing the kind of considered constructed environment. We had the pleasure of working with Thomas Heatherwick and his team on a project in Xi'an. We've got a number of other collaborations going with architects at the moment, and they're just work in a very creative, different way, and those conversations become very inspiring to me. I still can't help but love film and moving image. And I
Obviously.
like my references are so broad and wide. My daughter, one of my proudest moments is my daughter's really got into Japanese animation. So we've been geeking out on Demon Slayer and My Hero Academia, and I haven't got her into Ghost in the Shell yet because I was probably a little bit too old. Yeah, so we're kind of getting into all that kind of stuff. And what's been nice is when I was growing up, I was getting into Japanese animation like Akira and Ghost in the Shell and those kind of, the older stuff. And now I'm re-experiencing it with her, and she's introducing me to loads of new series that are like totally different. So yeah, I get an absolute buzz out of animation and movies in general. South Korean cinema is just incredible. There's so much stuff out there. And I think sometimes people are like, oh, it's all been done before. It's like, it really hasn't. Like that is like just scratching at the surface if you
Yeah.
think that like new stuff's not coming out all the time. It's just not maybe always popping up in the places that you think it might be. Yeah. And I love immersive and kind of experiential things that are kind of coming through. Just new mediums. Like there's new stuff coming out all the time, new technologies, new material science that people are experimenting with. I do love it when science and technology converge with the creative arts. I think that's really really powerful, really exciting. Yeah. So yeah, when science, art and technology kind of come together, and working with Oxford and the Schwarzman Centre, and they're looking at AI and ethics, science, and bringing that together with performative arts, which is just like, that's just a new area for people to explore, kind of seeing how data and science kind of converge with the humanities. So I love those types of projects. I love that way of thinking. So there's lots that inspire me. I think that's the problem. It's like,
That's not a problem.
how do I make my life a little bit more simple? And my wife gets really inspired by puppets. She's really into like animatronics and puppetry, and I find all of that stuff, what the Jim Henson Company did back in the day, I find really fascinating. So yeah, so too many things is the problem.
I think it's the nature of being creatives, by the way. I think we have a million eyes and a million ears, and we're also curious about more and more. And that's what
Yeah,
create more creativity in the world, and that's what makes us alive. I think we couldn't live without all these inspiration and influences all around us. I am very
really.
aware that I kept you for a very long time.
It brings us round full circle to, what it means to be creative. It's a passion. It's a passion and a way of being, isn't it? And we can't help it. It's just who we are.
That is so true. So I'm just going to ask you two last things, and then I promise I will let you go. One is, what would you advise for young people who want to be creative or want to get into the industry? And then the very last thing, if you want to share your website, your company, projects, anything you would like to share, I would love to share more with the audience as well.
Yeah, cool. So to answer the first question, then the
If I
advice that
was
I would
19, what would you
give,
tell me?
not to live up to anyone's expectations. Don't think too much on what you think the world requires from you. Do like find your own path. Just make sure that you find it interesting. Um, And when you're at the start of your journey, you can take a few wrong turns and it'll be okay, as long as you learn from it and as long as you're honest with yourself. So yeah, try and be honest with yourself. Try and be clear on what you want from something, and don't try and go towards a thing you think is going to make other people happy, because that doesn't work most of the time. Would be my advice to any 19-year-olds. The world is constantly changing. CGI, animation, user experience, customer experience did not exist when I was 90. The internet did not exist. So you trying to think what the world might want from you, I can't tell you what the world wants from you. You definitely won't be able to figure it out. Most film directors can't figure out what's going to happen in the future. They just make stuff up. I would stop trying to predict what the future is going to be and just kind of worry about the immediate now of what makes you come alive. That would be my advice to a 19-year-old.
Great. And where can we find
In terms of coming
your
back
work?
to us, territorystudio.com. Come and have a look at the work. All of our contact details are on there. I'm easily reached through LinkedIn or Instagram. So's the company, so's the rest of the team. Territory Group also represents Cantina Creative, who are our studio in LA and Vancouver. And we're always looking for talented people, and we're always looking for interesting collaborations. So, yeah, no, always interested, always trying to answer everyone that reaches out and gets in contact.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, David. This was amazing. I would talk to you for 2 years if I could, but I'm sure you have better things to do
I'd quite happily speak to you about creativity for 2 years, but there's some other people that want to speak to me about it as well. So I better
about
go.
something
Thank
else.
you.
I'm sure. Thank you so much. And I'll see you soon. And
Take
go,
care. Thank you.
everyone, go find David. And thank you so much. And see you soon.
Ciao.
Bye.